Hi, everybody. This is Lynn Serafinn from Trentino Genealogy.com, and I thought I'd let you see what I've been working on this last week or so. This is my personal tree. This is my Santa Croce master tree. The full name of the parish is Santa Croce del Bleggio. As you can see up in the left-hand corner here, I am getting very close to 30,000 people. There's 29,962 people here. So I have about 38 more people to go to get this to 30,000. I was actually this week working on some research on the Bertelli family. I do have Bertelli in my own family, but I also was working on them for a client who is a distant cousin of mine, and they have a different Bertelli branch. So what I was doing is the Bertelli family came from, well, maybe not originally, but they were predominantly from Priore, which is now is part of the whole area, including Ragoli, and there's 3 different communities there, but it's in Val Giudicare, north of Tione. Now, the Priore records don't go that far back, so I knew that they were in parish of Tione. So I had some old records of from the LDS, one of the LDS centers. I had some old records of the Tione records. So I was looking through them to see what early Bertelli I could find. Now, I'll tell you more about the Bertelli another time, because I've been studying about them and seeing their connection to the Lodron, the Counts of Lodron. Very, very interesting soap opera kind of story about them, and that goes way back. But what I discovered, that this is what I'm actually going to show, has actually nothing to do with the Bertelli. It has to do with this family called the Pellegrinati. Now, Pellegrinati is not the same as Pellegrini. Pellegrini is a different surname. And Pellegrinati is a surname that was found in Santa Croce del Bleggio. It died out at the end of the 1800s. I double-checked just to make sure. I knew it was extinct now. In fact, when I've mentioned it sometimes to people in Bleggio, they go, "Oh, I never heard of that name before," because it hasn't been around for 140 years. So they don't remember it necessarily, because there were no new lines after about the middle of toward the end of the 1800s. So anyway, but it's a very old name. It is based on the man's name Pellegrino, which, if you don't know what that means, it means a pilgrim, a religious pilgrim. So Pellegrino that's what the name means. And so Pellegrini and Pellegrinati both mean somebody descended from somebody named Pellegrino. That's what the surname means. But Pellegrinati specifically died out. Now, in Bleggio, the surname seems to have started in one of the villages called Bivedo. But there was a branch that also settled in Duvredo. Later, you'll see them in some of the other villages, but the ancient village of the Pellegrinati is Bivedo, and then branching into Duvredo, which are really quite near each other. They're just a short walk away from each other, kind of down the lane. My dad was born in Duvredo, but I have lots of ancestors from Bivedo. Anyway, I was very confused with this line, because there were tons and tons and tons and tons of them, and they all seem to repeat the same names. There are a lot of Simones, there's a lot of Eleuterios, and a lot of Pellegrinos. Those three personal names repeat over and over and over and over again, and it got very confusing, especially when the priests didn't put necessarily the names of the mothers in the records, or I've found in a couple of cases they've put records in the wrong place, and I'm not quite sure that the dates are quite right. But I was trying to be sure who this particular ancestor was. This is my 9 times great-grandfather. I don't have a baptismal date for him, because he was born before the beginning of the records. The records in Santa Croce start in 1565. However, I knew that there was an Eleuterio who was the son of a Simone and Maria. I didn't know her surname. Now, here's the thing I wanted to share with you. This is actually kind of for the sake of John Bellotti, because we share these ancestors, as do probably some of you. This is a terrible record because this is in terrible condition. I'm getting a better one from Trento. I'm sending off for it, but perhaps you can see it if I translate it for you, and you can get an idea. It's very grainy because this was made kind of like a photocopy a long, long time ago, but I could just about read it. Now, the reason why it caught my attention is because I was looking for Bertelli's, and I saw over here, I don't know if you can see it, but this name here says Rocco Bertelli. That's actually the name of the priest, but I saw it. I said, oh, okay. But then as I was reading along, I realized that wasn't the name of the priest, and that the name, this is a marriage record, first of all, that the name of the people getting married, names of the people getting married were actually at the bottom of the record down here. So just very briefly, the date is 25th of February, 1588. That's actually an 8. I know it looks a little like a 6 on the screen, but it's an 8. And it says in the church of San Faustino, which is the name of the church in Ragoli. If you've ever been to Ragoli in Val Giudicari, it's a beautiful church. So it's in that church, but perhaps an earlier version before it was renovated. I think that what is there now was probably done a little later in like the 17th or 18th century, but this is in the 1500s. So the church of San Faustino, and it says that this priest, Giovanni Antonio, the curate of the said church, in the presence of, I'm sorry, this isn't the priest, in the presence of Don Rocco Bertelli of Priori. That says Priori, it's hard to see it, but I know that's what it says. And then these other people who are the other witnesses, I won't go through all of them. So saying this priest, in the presence of these witnesses, contracted, here's the word contracted in matrimony, inter means between, and here are the names of the people. This is where my jaw kind of dropped, because I was like, I wasn't expecting to see this in Tione. It says Simone, here's Simone, son of the late, this thing over here means that the father is deceased, son of the late Salvatore Pellegrinati of, and I wouldn't know what it says except that I know what it says, Bivedo, it says Bive, no, it says Bivedo, there is a D-O at the end, of Bivedo, and then it says Plebis Bletz, and that means in the parish of Bleggio. Bletz is how they used to spell it back in the old days. So Simone, son of the late Salvatore Pellegrinati of Bivedo, of the parish of Bleggio. And here's the wife's name, Maria. I knew her name was Maria, but I didn't know who she was. Maria, daughter of the late Bartolomeo, son of Vancino, which I believe would be Avancino, that is a man's name. And then the surname is Preti. It says Pretio, which is a Latinized form of Preti. Preti is, it's not the same as de Pretis, different surname. Preti is a surname in Tione. And so it says, Maria, daughter of Bartolomeo, who was son of Avancino, Preti of the parish of Tione. Now, Preti goes back there to the 1400s, so I know that's what that surname is. So all of a sudden, I went from only kind of knowing her name and not really knowing for sure if I had his father right, to knowing his father and knowing her father and her grandfather, her paternal grandfather. So I'll get a better copy of this, but I did translate it and I have put it on the tree. So what this means is I realized that this Simone, this had to have been, even though it didn't say he was widowed, it has to have been, because I'd already deduced that this Simone was the son of Salvatore because of these children here. And then all of a sudden a wife disappears, and the next year he has another wife. Now, I've only found one child for them. I think it's because she probably was a bit older. She may have been a little older than even what I have here. And you'll notice that I have this word Pezzola in capitals here, and that's because that's their sopranome. That's the family sopranome. It could be Pezzola, Pezzuola, I'm not quite sure, but that's how I've put it. Now, I've put it in big capitals so that I could differentiate between the lines. And what I've deduced from this, because there's another one, if you look on the left here, here's Eleuterio Pezzola Pellegrini. That's my ancestor, but so is this Eleuterio, different one, and his sopranome is Boldrini or Boldrina, however I'm calling it Boldrini. It's hard to read the handwriting, but as long as I'm consistent, then that makes it work. So now this was the other thing that kind of solved the lines. I have been working for 2 days trying to differentiate who these lines are. I've had to virtually enter every single Pellegrinati from the beginning of the records till about 1640 or thereabouts, because it was the only way to figure out which lines were which. Now, this one was a very interesting one. You'll notice that he has Lucia Formaini here. I should actually change the default wife, because he had 2 wives, and they were both named Lucia, so that gets very confusing. I've made a few adjustments. I won't go into all of them, but I made a few conjectures. However, I'm going to share with you another record that I found really interesting, and this is how I could figure out who was who. And it's this one right here. This one's a little better quality, so you should be able to see it. This one I got from Trento, so you can see the script better. It's not a photocopy. This is a digital copy. I put it in Photoshop. I could probably make it a bit darker, but you can read it. And it's the 13th of June, 1633. Now, when I first read this, I saw this a few years ago, and I didn't quite understand it because my Latin wasn't as good. But when I say a few years ago, I mean 7, 8 years ago, whenever it was. But now I looked at it and said, oh, I understand what this says. This is very interesting. So it says in the church of Sant'Antonio, and in this case, Sant'Antonio is the name of the church in Bivedo, in Santa Croce di Bleggio. It's one of the curate churches, one of the bigger of the little churches. It's a small church, but it's a bigger of the small churches. So it says, in the church of Sant'Antonio, contracted in marriage by verbal, exchange of vows according to the Holy Council of Trento, it says, were, and there's that inter again, that INT, Eleuterio, that means Luther, Eleuterio, Pellegrinati, and Lucia, daughter of Lorenzo Formaini. Some of you I know have the name Formaini. Now this is his second wife, and I'll go. No, actually, it's not. No. This is not his second wife, is it? Yes, it is. I'll go through this in a minute. So Lucia, daughter of Lorenzo Formaini. Nec non means, and also the contract of marriage on the same day between Battista, or Giovanni Battista, son of, and this is the thing that son of the aforesaid Lorenzo. So in other words, Battista is the son of this same Lorenzo Formaini. So it means her brother, Lucia's brother, is getting married on the same day. But this is the tricky bit that I didn't notice the first time I saw this several years ago. And Domenica, daughter of, and I could never make out what this word was because I didn't analyze the handwriting enough. It says predicti, or something, however you say it in Latin. This flourish is his abbreviation for PRE, and then it's DICTI. So it means the aforesaid Eleuterio. And that's the whole sentence. So let me read that again. So the second marriage is Battista, son of the aforesaid Lorenzo. So Lorenzo Formaini, so in other words, Battista Formaini, and Domenica, daughter of the aforementioned Eleuterio. So that means the brother and sister are marrying a father and daughter. So the father is widowed. So this, yes, it is this fellow here, this Eleuterio. It doesn't say he's a widow, but that's what's happening here. Because this Lucia, he's married 2 Lucias. The first one is my ancestor. This one is not. And So this Eleuterio is the aforesaid Eleuterio. Domenica is his daughter. So that is what it's saying here. So you've got 2 generations going on here. I couldn't make this out when I first saw this record, like I say, many years ago. And I looked at it today and I said, oh, heck, or yesterday. I said, oh, this is fantastic. And then it gives a list of all of the witnesses down there. So what that did is it told me, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that this Eleuterio, who was married to this Lucia, who is my ancestor, and this Lucia Formani, that it's the same man. So if I knew who the one who married Lucia Costantini was, which I did, then I knew who the next one was. And furthermore, I knew which Domenica was the one who married, where is it? Lucia, sorry. Which daughter it was who married, I got it all mixed up. Domenica. There we go. Domenica, which Domenica married Formaini. So I had it all figured out. And that enabled me to construct these lines. I know I'm probably confusing you, but at any rate, it made it clear that this was the Boldrini line, and actually his son Domenico is my ancestor. That's through his first wife. And what I kind of came up with was that the Boldrinis were all children or descendants of this fellow named Domenico. And then the ones that were Pezzola were descendants of someone else. They were descendants of this Salvatore. That's what I kind of saw. And I think maybe Domenico and Salvatore, they may have been brothers, but I can't go any further back because this is well before the beginning of the records. And so, these people are born in the early 1500s and the records don't even start until the 1560s. So I have to conjecture all of this by putting it all together. But you can see, this is in Family Tree Maker, and with these dots here, these are the color codes. I can see which lines are ancestors of whom. I haven't constructed all of them yet. There is still some kind of floating around, and there's also a Pellegrinati that were off in Stenico, which have nothing to do with my lines, but they are for some other people's lines. But this is the thing, is I can now see how it all comes down. And it all came to 2 things. It came to finding one record accidentally in Tione, which kind of kickstarted the whole thing. 3 things then. Finding that record, reassembling all of the Pellegrinati, trying to look for where does it say the soprannome, where does it not? Did I miss it sometimes? And I did, because some records are actually entered under the soprannome, not even the surname. And years ago, I wouldn't have been aware, for instance, that Boldrini actually meant Pellegrinati. I wouldn't have noticed it. So I had to go through all of those records again, so about 100 years worth of records, and reassemble the whole thing. And I've come up with what I think is about maybe 80% accurate. There's still a lot of loose ends, but I'm very pleased with this. So this is why I was very excited. And I know it sounds silly, perhaps, to get all excited about all of this, but I have to tell you, I had so many Simones and so many Eleuterios and so many Pellegrinos, I couldn't figure out who was who. Now I have far fewer. There's still some hanging around, but there are way fewer of them. They're starting to consolidate, and I'm starting to see the pattern of how they're related. And I'm also looking at godparents and seeing if I could figure out who's a brother of whom, and all of those kinds of things. These are all my ancestors, all of these colors here. If they're green, those are John's ancestors. All the other colors are mine. Or actually, the yellow is my other client, and the other colors are all of mine. So I'm related. I'm descended by all of these people. So anyways, just wanted to share that with you. I know it's silly. It's not really a Philo Friday, but I thought maybe you'd be interested in that. And I will be continuing to work on this next week for my client to try to finalize his tree. And I'm also working on the Bertelli in the background. And take care. Have a good weekend.